This is just a warning that the following video does contain patch 5.4 spoilers. If you do not wish to have the following content ruined for you, as some people politely put it, then please do close the video now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Mr. Pandaria PTR preview video. And, you know, patch 5.4 is soon to be here. We will be entering the Siege of Orgrimmar and eventually killing off Garrosh Hellscream. But first of all, we must kill off his cronies, as we'll call them, because that's a very, very weird word and I never want to use it again. Kill them before him, and in this video we will be taking a look at the Iron Juggernaut on 10-man normal mode. Unfortunately, there will be no I'm the Juggernaut bitch references, so I do apologise in advance for that. However, the fight's pretty good, and look at the boss. He's massive. He's like a massive scorpion-like thing, but he's not a scorpion. It's brilliant. The fight's really good and fun. So what I'm going to do, like with my old PTR preview boss videos, is just play some of the tries in the background and give you a list of all the abilities and what they kind of do and how to deal with them. Remember that this is PTR and everything is subject to change, so just take this video with a pinch of salt. So this fight is it's a two-phase fight. It will require 2 tanks as well due to a debuff that we'll talk about later on in the video. And for once there is a god and you cannot cheese this debuff. Paladins cannot remove it from them with bop. I don't care about other classes that can do it, but I'm bored of paladins being able to solo tank every stupid fight in the Throne of Thunder. Finally, the nightmare is over and they can't remove it anymore, which is brilliant, but we'll speak about that later on. Makes me really happy on the inside. So yeah, it's a 2-phase fight, and you will only be tanking him in one of those phases. So we'll take a look at the first phase, which is where you will be tanking him, and he's got a few abilities that are easy to deal with. However, there's one that's a little bit weird that I'll speak about in a moment. So first of all, the ability that the tanks will need to look out for in this phase is called Flame Vents, and you will be swapping when you have 3 stacks of this debuff, possibly more if you use your cooldowns effectively. And this is where he will kind of spew flame in a frontal cone in front of him, and it will deal 300k fire damage and also apply a stacking debuff that will increase the fire damage that that player takes by 10% per stack, and also deal 20k damage every second per stack. So you're swapping on 3 stacks, you're going to be taking 60k damage every second and taking 30% more fire damage overall. You need to make sure that only one tank is obviously standing in front of the boss at the time, and the other one either moves to the side of the boss or behind the boss, so that he doesn't get the debuff at the same time. His next ability is called Borer Drill, and this is where he will dig his little pincers into the ground. I call them pincers because I think he's a scorpion. It's quite funny. And this is where it will kind of crack the ground, and you'll see these kind of spike walls come towards you. They're not very big, but they are kind of obvious. And if you are to get hit by these, then they will deal damage to you. That's all. It's only a small amount of damage, about 50k I think it is on 10-man normal, so you should dodge them because there's a lot of damage going out on this fight. But at the same time, if you accidentally get hit by one every now and then, it might not be too bad. Now these will move out in all directions, so everyone will need to be aware of these. His next ability is called Laser Burn, and this is where he will target a random player in the raid and deal 250k initial damage to them with his pew pew laser firing it, etc. Once the initial damage of 250k has been dealt, it will then inflict 55k damage every 2 seconds after, so this is obviously something you've just got to heal through. Unfortunately, no specifics on how long the debuff lasts for on the player. It might go until the end of the fight, but I doubt it. It'll probably be something like 20 seconds or 30 seconds. His next ability is called Mortar Cannon, and this is where he will target a random player within the raid. I think just ranged and healers, most likely melee as well. It doesn't focus on the tanks, thankfully. And he will target them with his cannons. Now, these leave a massive red circle on the ground, which you've probably seen in the video in the background. And after a few seconds, it will fire a cannon at this circle mortar landing point. And anyone that is within 8 yards of this will take 250k damage. Now, I don't know if the 8 yards refers to just the circle itself that's on the ground, or 8 yards around that circle. So you might want to give that a few tries, just kind of see how it does actually work. But I do think it is only the red circle. I was quite close to it a few times. And his final ability, which is quite cool, It's called Crawler Mines, and this is where he will release several mines which move away from him. They move, hence being called Crawler Mines, and they will burrow themselves into the ground. Now, you'll see that above the mine's head there is a little kind of timer with a picture of a bomb next to it. Hint, hint. And if the timer reaches 0, then they will detonate and deal 300k damage to everyone in the raid. Now, I think it was 3 of them spawned at any one time, so that's obviously going to be a lot of damage to your raid. However, if you go up to the mine and right click on it, then you can effectively stop it detonating by stomping on it, which doesn't seem like a very smart idea at first, but it is in the long run. Now, when you right click on this mine / stomp on it, it will blow it up, and this is the bit that confuses me slightly. In the dungeon journal, it says it will deal over 1 million damage to that player and knock them up in the air. The knock up in the air bit's fine, you don't go up very far, it's not like Ragnaros kind of trap taking height, it's just a small amount of height that you don't take too much fall damage from. The bit that does confuse me is the 1 million damage, because we were having players who weren't having to use their own kind of personal cooldowns, taking the mines and blowing themselves up effectively. So that's again something that you should probably look into. It's the first phase, and as I've mentioned, remember during the first phase you will be tanking him as he will be free to move around. In the second phase, however, you don't actually need to tank the boss, thankfully, so you can have him kind of positioned in a correct place, and he will enter the second phase when his energy bar reaches 100, so you do need to be aware of his little energy bar. It's kind of good to keep a track of where you can position him based on how long it's going to take him to actually enter siege mode. Now, as I've said, when he enters siege mode, he will just plant himself in the ground, he kind of just drills down a little bit, and he doesn't need tanking at all, and he won't move. Now, during this phase, he will lose his abilities from phase 1, and he will gain some new abilities that you'll have to deal with. I'll list these abilities in a minute, but you do need to remember once this phase is over, you will go back to phase 1, and then get the first, 5, 6 abilities back, and then it's just kind of a rinse and repeat fight. So once you've got the phases kind of nailed, you should be able to get a fairly simple kill. It's not overly complex. Now, in the second phase, or siege mode phase as we'll call it, his first ability is called Seismic Activity, and this is where he will just cause an earthquake, and strangely Orgrimmar doesn't fall down in the background, but, you know, we'll let the designers off on that one. They kind of need it to be standing, unless it's well built. You never know. Anyway, the earthquake will deal 35,000 nature damage to everyone in the raid every second. Now, this can also cause a ability called Shock Pulse to trigger, and as you probably noticed in the video, this is where everybody gets knocked back really far, unfortunately. We tried to figure out a few ways to deal with the Shock Pulse ability, like standing near to walls and positioning ourselves better, but it seemed like wherever you do end up standing, he does end up knocking you back quite far, so we just had to use Druid Roars in order to get close, and then we just used healing cooldowns after that in order to make sure people were topped off. His second ability in this phase is called Demolisher Cannons, and this kind of works like the Mortar Cannon in the first phase, and what it will do is it'll fire cannons up into the air, and they will kind of target themselves on random players. When they land, they'll inflict 150,000 damage to anyone that's standing within 6 yards. So this is just a positioning ability. You need to make sure you're not standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, as there's quite a bit of damage going out in this phase anyway. Now, his final 2 abilities in this phase kind of work together, but I'll go over them individually, just because it's easier for you to understand them separately first and then together. So his next ability is called Cutter Laser, and what this will do is it will fixate on a random target in the raid and it will chase after them.
That's cool.
Now, if the laser is to hit any player, it will deal 200,000 fire damage to them, like just straight up 200,000 fire damage, no questions asked. The best way to think about this ability, and this is only for people that raided Blackwing Descent in Cataclysm in, the first tier, it's kind of like on Atramedes, where he would target people with his fiery laser when he flew up. It's kind of like that in a way, but it's not, because we don't know if it speeds up or not. I think it might have been a bit bugged because it did seem to be moving ever so slowly when it targeted some people. And this works in conjunction with his next ability, which is called Explosive Tar. and this is where he will kind of spew out bits of tar in several directions in front of him, and if you happen to stand in this tar, it will deal 20k nature damage every second, and also reduce your movement speed by 30%. So I guess this works with Cutter Laser in two ways really, because obviously you lose 30% movement speed, and there's a potential chance you could get the laser chasing after you. And also, if the Cutter Laser is run over the tar, then the tar will explode and deal 200,000 damage to everyone in the raid. So the abilities work well together, just, you know, you don't really want things like that going off, because the healing requirements for this fight do seem not overly stressful, but it might be quite a bit during this phase. So that is it. That is the Juggernaut, bitch, so to speak. I can't do accents, so I'll never do that again. Like I say, the fight, it's relatively fun. We had fun trying it, and thank you to the guild that took me in and homed me for an hour while we did test it. So, as always, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in future Mr. Pandaria PTR preview videos such as this one, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel.